Yeah, I did change, and I'm really glad I changed.
This one's wife, her heart of darkness, the threat to national security. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. It's a trite observation that narcissists cause problems, but notwithstanding its triteness, it is accurate nevertheless. Some of you, listening to me, have fallen foul of narcissists, and will be able to bear testament to the impact that it has had upon you. My videos and blog articles have helped millions of people understand what they have been dealing with, and, through that understanding, put in place the steps that are required to protect themselves and find freedom. I have spoken with thousands of people, untangling their issues in relation to the narcissist, enabling them to understand what has happened, to make sense of the devastation that has been wrought upon them. For many, the impact of the narcissist is personal. Physical pain, emotional suffering, psychological torture, financial Armageddon. Disputes, arguments, problems in relation to child custody, lost relationships. Time, energy, money, all invested, poured down the drain in the pursuit of trying to resolve matters with the narcissist. But you will also have come to understand from my work that narcissists can wreak devastation on a greater level, not just a personal, intimate level, but in relation to the ways that they could take over a company and run it into the ground with the loss of jobs, embezzlement of funds, which results in misery as people in their thousands lose their retirement savings, the starting of wars and conflicts. Often, where misery on a large scale occurs, you'll find that there is a narcissist propagating it. That form of misery is often as a direct consequence of the needs of that narcissist, their self-absorbed worldview causing them to prolong a conflict unnecessarily, to engage in the issuing of prejudices against a particular group. But it is also the case that many narcissists cause problems as a collateral consequence of them pursuing the prime aims, that they didn't focus or intend upon the actual problem to occur, but it does as a consequence of them asserting control, drawing fuel, etc. This is something that often occurs in relation to the way that this one's wife behaves. That her pursuit of her own agenda results in problems for other people. And we now have an instance of an opinion that is advanced by Mark Toth and Jonathan Sweet in relation to what is a dangerous collateral consequence arising from the self-absorption of this one's wife on a geopolitical stage. The authors write, "It should have been a simple trip to London. Prince Harry arrived on Tuesday to attend a worthy cause. He celebrated the 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games at St. Paul's Cathedral, an event which he co-founded in 2014 to honour wounded soldiers and military veterans that now includes 23 nations." Pausing there, as you know, this one's wife has sought to commandeer the Invictus Games as her own personal vehicle for the advancement of her own image, i.e. the prime aims. He attended St. Paul's Cathedral alone. His wife, this one's wife, the Duchess of Sussex, remained in Monty Shitshow, as did King Charles III's 2 young grandchildren. Harry did not make time to see his ailing father, who was diagnosed with an unspecified cancer in February. Preemptively, Harry's office released a statement disingenuously claiming it was due to his father's diary of commitments and various other priorities. But sons are always priorities, even to kings. The Duke of Sussex's estrangement from his family uncomfortably continues, including from his brother William, the Prince of Wales, and his sister-in-law Catherine, the Princess of Wales. What should have been the heart of an inspiring trip that ends later this week in Nigeria has now turned into a dystopian exercise reminiscent of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. This one's wife's decision to shun King Charles once again, assertion of control by staying in a position of withdrawal, is once again par for the course, essentially declaring herself persona non grata in the United Kingdom. So too, in effect, at least from a public perception standpoint, is this one's wife's preventing the king from seeing her children, in effect weaponizing them against the king. Pausing there, you will know from much of my work the way that a narcissist will utilize children as pawns to triangulate with other people for the purpose of asserting control over them. This is most commonly done in the situation of child custody dispute between narcissist and non-narcissist parent, but it can also be done in a wider way, as is the case with this one's wife, whereby she seeks to assert control over Charles by preventing him from having any meaningful relationship with his grandchildren. But familial darkness is a small matter compared to carelessly spreading darkness on the global stage. Geopolitical and national security implications are very much in play right now in the Sahel in Saharan Africa. Harry and this one's wife's initial decision to accept Nigerian Defence Minister Alhaji Mohammed Abubakar Badaru's invitation to visit Abuja this week was completely above reproach. Nigeria is hopeful of soon hosting a future Invictus Games, and Nigeria is a vital ally in an increasingly destabilized yet strategically important region of Africa. This one's wife's machinations, however, have changed all of that. By refusing to travel to London with Harry, and by failing to bring her children along with them to see King Charles and Queen Camilla, this one's wife intentionally put the media spotlight on herself just in time for it to highlight her trip to Nigeria. This, of course, is entirely correct. As you know, this one's wife, in the craving for fuel and control, repeatedly needs to do things that place the spotlight upon her and take it away from other people. Hollywood power games may play to one's advantage in Tinseltown, but in the real world of foreign policy and national security, Harry and this one's wife are only naively strengthening the hands of Moscow and Beijing. Instead of arriving in Abuja as the beloved daughter-in-law of the UK's reigning monarch, who is also the head of the 56-member Commonwealth of Nations, this one's wife chose to travel alone to Nigeria and, in effect, to play the role of a grieved royal outcast bearing the self-proclaimed scars of modern-day British racism, playing the victim, pity play, race card. To be sure, legacy racism persists in the United Kingdom as it does in other countries, including the United States. However, the United Kingdom is not a racist country, nor one defined by racism. Just look at the people British voters put in power. Rishi Sunak, England's Prime Minister, is of Punjabi Indian heritage, the son of Hindu parents who were born in East Africa, although it is worth pointing out that nobody actually voted for Rishi Sunak amongst the electorate, something that this article omits. Sadiq Khan, the three-term mayor of London, is of Pakistani descent and the son of Sunni Muslims. Until Tuesday, Hamza Yousaf, himself a Muslim, was the First Minister of Scotland. All three men are representative of the cosmopolitan England that came into its prime during the reign of the late Queen Elizabeth II, and as a result of her council. That is the messaging that Harry and this one's wife should be bringing to Nigeria. One of the United Kingdom's commitment to the Commonwealth, especially in Africa, and the relevance of the global south in modern-day England, Scotland and Wales. Instead, we are witnessing a redux of Empire 2.0, the notion that the Commonwealth is just a modern-day imperialist enterprise, that Harry and this one's wife foolishly allowed themselves to first become associated with it in their eponymous Netflix series and their Oprah Winfrey interview, when they raised still unsubstantiated claims of racism in the royal family, smearing, revision of history. Harry and this one's wife are not simply popping in to a Nigeria detached from the regional realities of sub-Saharan Africa. Niger, an impoverished country to its north in the Western Sahel, underwent a coup in 2023. US forces were expelled from an airbase being used to surveil and interdict Boko Haram, essentially a Nigerian Taliban, and ISIS operating in West Africa. Earlier this month, Russian President Vladimir Putin's military forces began using Airbase 101. Moscow is rapidly building military and economic inroads into the region, including in nearby Chad, Mali, and Burkina Faso, and toppling previously stable democracies throughout the Sahel in the process. One key factor in overthrowing once Western-friendly countries is Putin's propaganda wars, aimed at painting the UK and its NATO allies as modern-day Western imperialists and unrepentant racists. Putin does this in concert with the Chinese president as part of their coordinated effort to undermine and destroy the Commonwealth in Africa. Harry and this one's wife's most virulent fandom, often referred to as the Sussex Squad, fail to understand the tragic extent to which African nationals are being placed in harm's way by Moscow and Beijing. Now, as Western interests are being attacked, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are unwittingly aiding Russia and China by continuing to undermine King Charles as head of state and head of Commonwealth. Pausing there. This one's wife is not consciously setting out to aid Russia and China. She isn't actually consciously setting out to necessarily undermine Charles. What she's doing is wanting to make herself first and foremost. It's all about her, and in turn, that means it can't be about King Charles, and thus the collateral consequence is undermining him, which in then turns aid China and Russia. Millions of African civilians in the Sahel are now being actively economically exploited by Russia and China. National resources are being stolen, and in hundreds of cases they are being brutally massacred by Russian paramilitary groups. Ditto in the Central African Republic, Sudan, and across the entire African continent. And Nigeria, courtesy of Boko Haram, is high on Russia and China's wish list in Africa. Democracy dies in darkness, but also in naivety. Harry and this one's wife must ditch their knives-out approach to King Charles that was on display in Jamaica, and recognise that when they operate on the world stage, their decisions and actions result in very real consequences because of who Harry's father is and the role he plays in global affairs. Unfortunately, Harry and this one's wife remain self-servingly lost in propagating a dystopian heart of darkness that in reality ostensibly no longer exists. Western imperialism and racism of old are not destroying modern-day Africa. Rather, Russian and Chinese military and economic imperialism are subjugating sub-Saharan Africa increasingly through violence and anti-democratic oppression. This piece demonstrates that the self-absorbed behaviour of this one's wife thus undermines King Charles and plays into the hands of Russia and China in relation to Africa. That her attendance in Nigeria, of propagating this message of suggesting that there is still this Western influence by way of imperialism and colonialism, and that she rejects that, and thus attacking King Charles, aids the narratives that are being placed out there by Russia and China. She thinks, of course, that she's going to Nigeria for the purposes of meeting people, having involvement in Invictus. Of course, she's wanting to maintain her profile, and she's being paid for this attendance also. But once again, the self-absorption of the narcissist results in collateral consequences, as Mark Toth and Jonathan Sweet so eruditely point out. It demonstrates the danger of this one's wife. She hasn't sat down and thought, I'm going to be this geopolitical puppeteer. She hasn't got the nous, the ability, or the foresight to do so. But what it does show is the way that a prominent narcissist such as this one's wife, who is so focused on herself, in ensuring that she is the one that is spoken about to the detriment of other members of the royal family, and particularly King Charles, has a very real impact upon national security in relation to geopolitical events. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.